Break. Just be careful out there. Back here with Coach Mangini, the ever-dramatic soap opera that is the Pittsburgh Steelers continues to spin along. All right, quick recap now. On Monday, it was reported that Big Ben and Antonio Brown got into a heated argument in practice, leading to AB's benching on Sunday. It is now being reported that Brown actually requested a trade from the Steelers, a trade that's near impossible due to a heavy cap hit and also the fact that he's one of the best receivers in football. Here's Ben Roethlisberger on what went down.
People are making a big deal about a walkthrough on Wednesday, that there was a blow-up, a fight between he and I. I don't know anything about that. If there was a blow-up or something, I sure as heck didn't see it. This big deal was made about that, and I'm not really sure where that comes from. You know, AB and I talked to AB on Thursday morning because after the walkthrough, AB left on Wednesday, and then on Thursday morning I talked to AB, and everything was great and fine, and then this story just keeps growing. So, like I said, I consider AB one of my closest friends on the team.
All right, Coach, let's start with, first of all, what was your reaction to Antonio Brown missing the rest of the week of practice and then showing up on Sunday expecting to play?
Well, so in the quote here, he just said after the walkthrough, he left on Wednesday, right? Like Antonio left the building on Wednesday. That to me is incredible. And the fact that he missed practice on Thursday or Friday, is that where we're at with all this? And so it gets to the point where there's nothing that the Steelers could do besides not play him. When you miss that much practice, when you get into an issue like this and you're not in the building, there's no way you can play that guy. And it's so hard when you're in that situation because you know you're fighting for a chance to win the division. It's the most important game because it has so much significance to the postseason, and you've got to sit down your best player. But this isn't something new, I'm sure. And what's reported and what we hear about is a fraction of things that happen in buildings. And then you know that. Like, there's a lot of stuff that comes out in the media that's like the tip of the iceberg. So there's way more to the story.
I'm sure there's more to the story. And when you say this isn't new, where I'll disagree is this is as extreme as it gets. I don't think something this extreme has happened before, where Antonio Brown or a player of that caliber, of that tier in that locker room, just goes AWOL for the 3 final days of the week to where the team has to sit him. And this is a playoff week for Pittsburgh. It's why you've sat next to me long enough to know there's a lot of behavior that you don't excuse that I can, that I think the media blows up too much of, that I think we forget we're dealing with guys in their 20s that are young and rich and sometimes irrational. But if you can't rely on a guy to show up for work in the most important days of your season, then I don't know how you can rely on him at any point moving forward. So, like, when you ask the question...
Moving forward, like, should they get rid of him?
I would certainly field the offers. I don't know when they forced Mike Tomlin's hand as far as sitting him. You said that, right? Tomlin had no choice. He couldn't play. He couldn't play Antonio Brown in a moment where they needed Antonio Brown. I know they won the game, but they scored 16 points. They were relying on a kicker they brought in off the street because Boswell got hurt. Juju got shut down to a large degree. You know why? Because the coverage AB usually gets was shifted to Juju, and now life's not quite as easy. They were very fortunate to win that game. I've got to listen to offers because if I don't, what other penalty can I give Antonio Brown? How can I make sure this isn't just going to be his MO moving forward? A guy who, in my eyes, as great as he is, has shown on and off the field some horrific judgment over the past few years.
No, I understand exactly what you're saying. And I guess the thought would be with a star player, the one thing that you can take from him that would affect his decision-making moving forward would be playing time. And everybody's saying that Antonio Brown is more concerned with him rather than overall team success. But I would argue that Antonio Brown didn't go AWOL for no reason, right? Antonio Brown was upset because of some of the things that we've seen from Ben Roethlisberger this year. Yeah, I know he's thrown for 34 touchdowns, a career high and a franchise record, but he's also thrown the ball to the opposing team a whole lot. And yet he seems to come out in the media and be critical of teammates and of decisions that the organization makes. So I don't necessarily know that we've seen the best leadership from Ben Roethlisberger, and it's probably coming to a head with his relationship with Antonio Brown. So that's why AB had that potential blow up that we're hearing about. But moving forward, if you consider where the Pittsburgh Steelers are at as an organization, their window to win a championship is now. And considering that you're going to lose Le'Veon Bell in free agency and that Big Ben is going into the final year of a contract and he's going to be 37 years old, I don't know that you become a better team by getting rid of Antonio Brown.
Well, you can't. I mean, you're going to have a huge salary cap hit, and he is one of the best players. And organizationally, you're not surprised by this behavior. When you sign someone that has an element of unpredictability to him, you're going into that with your eyes wide open, and you know that once you give him a big contract with guaranteed money, with salary cap ramifications, if you get rid of him, that's it. You're stuck, and you're going to have to navigate through that unpredictable behavior, and you make that decision organizationally. So things like this happen. So now as an organization, you've got to respond to it, but you can't look at it and go, I had no idea that was a possibility.
See, you just said you can't. I disagree with both of you that you can't. It's $22 million against your cap if he's on your team next year, and it's $21 million if you trade him today. So you might say, okay, so now you get $7 million of savings to not have Antonio Brown, but it's not just that. You get the draft capital in an era where Amari Cooper got you a first-round pick, so Antonio Brown's going to get you more than that. Antonio Brown, because of the way his contract's written, whoever trades for him, it's a great deal. It's 3 years at $36 million total, so it's $12 million per year, which makes him an even more attractive piece. And what I would argue is this. I would argue the Steelers' window closed this era. It closed with that Jacksonville playoff game. It closed when Le'Veon Bell didn't come back, and when this season, when they had actually pretty good health, they still couldn't get to 10 wins. The Browns are only going to get better. The Ravens are, I believe, here to stay with Lamar Jackson. Like, I think it might be time, even with Big Ben going into year 16, it might be time to start thinking about the future for an organization that has competed in every decade since they've been in existence.
How can you say that their championship window closed last year when your quarterback led the league in passing yardage, you got one of the best receivers in the game, and you have a top 10 defense that led the league in sacks?
Because all of those things were true. And they're not one of the 12 teams still playing. All of those things were true. And even if week 17 had gone differently, they would have been limping into the postseason.
But it's not addition by subtraction by getting rid of one of the best wide receivers in the game. Like, you don't all of a sudden get better, and you're talking about the cap charge, it's $1 million left if you trade him as opposed to keeping him. You don't get better by getting rid of Antonio Brown.
But it's also $0 in the years moving forward.
But look, you have less flexibility in free agency. You've got less flexibility because of that salary cap hit that you take, and then you've got to replace a guy with 100 receptions. Then Antonio Brown is so hard to deal with for defenses. He is so good that at some point there's certain players that you deal with the headaches, and Pittsburgh has always been willing to deal with those headaches.
But the headaches on this team for the past couple years has been because of Lev Bell or Antonio Brown or Ben Roethlisberger. Those are really the only three people we talk about, and we keep saying, oh, well, Pittsburgh's going to have to change their culture, or they're just going to have to live with the consequences. Well, now you got rid of one. There's a chance you can get rid of the second one, and he's almost on his way out.
But so here's my thing. I think Ben Roethlisberger is a huge part of this problem. Okay. I think Ben Roethlisberger, I want to make that clear, because you said that earlier, I agree with you. I think the way the organization has treated him, for whether we want to go to the way they protected him after the motorcycle incident, the way he was protected after the horrifying allegations off the field, and Ben has always been protected. The moment Todd Haley got there, he wanted him run out of town, finally got that. He consistently threw Le'Veon Bell under the bus during this process. Maybe, I don't know it's true, but maybe a universe exists where people like Big Ben have put their arms around Le'Veon Bell during his holdout, that after 10 weeks he signs that tender, and they have him right now. We have seen what he said when they threw the pick against the Broncos, saying AB ran the wrong route. But you can't do anything about Big Ben. He is a made man in Pittsburgh. They're not cutting him. They're not trading him. We always say the Steelers have a different type of culture, a different family. If you want to maybe set Juju on a different career arc than the one Martavis went on, than the one Le'Veon Bell went on, maybe you have to have a shocking moment of trading your best player. I'm not saying cut him. You would get stuff back. You would have the same cap flexibility with him or without him, because, like I said, $22 million on the cap with him, $21 million without him. Now you have a gaping hole at your #1 wide receiver spot. But if this isn't tradable behavior, then nothing is. If not showing up for work in a playoff week is not tradable behavior, people were talking about trading Odell because he did an interview, because he did a stupid interview. This was letting down everyone in the organization. I can't believe I've gotten to this point. You haven't.
Well, look, I don't think I would have done the contract extension. And then when you look at this, once you start paying people that type of money, there's nothing that you can do. And they're not surprised by the way that he acts. And if you draft a guy that's slow and he runs slow, you can't be mad at him. That's what you drafted. So if you decide to sign someone that has an element of unpredictability and they act unpredictably, you can't be mad at him because that's what you signed up for.
Here's I agree with that in general, but I think when the behavior ramps up, when it's been that AB's been, once upon a time it was, God, every time he scores a touchdown, seems like he gets a celebration penalty. Like he knows it's against the rules, gets penalty. Tomlin a few years ago said, what do you want me to do? Not play him, he's a great player, I'll deal with it. And then it's Facebook living during a speech that could have been devastating to Tomlin. Tomlin could have said anything in that spot that could have followed him forever. Then it's this offseason, allegedly, throwing furniture off a balcony that could almost hit a small child. Now it's not showing up for work. If the unpredictability gets to irrational decisions, at some point I say, hey, you want to give me a first and a third? You want to let me have more cap flexibility moving forward? See if Juju can grow into that role and we can have a reset? I'm listening. I'm certainly listening.
It is absolutely turned into a bizarre world here. I've never heard you take this side, and I haven't heard you take that side. That being said, we'll take a commercial break. Coming up, did we all jump the gun on Tom Brady's demise? That's ahead on First Things First.
Cooked. Finished. Done.
Can't answer
I'll
the
be
question
the last one of that part.